Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama,
keep getting these marginal warnings of tornadoes. Has it ever happened in this area?
No, it's probably the second year now. We've got one or two.
So, Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jai Sri Chaitanya Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. We were going to begin with Madhya-Lila chapter 17, Lord Chaitanya making his pilgrimage to Vrindavan, but an idea came to my mind. Madhya-Lila chapter 16, the Lord's attempt to go to Vrindavan. I wanted to do a one-day synopsis of that, one evening synopsis, because it's very mystical and inconceivable indeed. How could Mahaprabhu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Gaur Bhagavan, fail to attain Vrindavan? Just the very title of the chapter, the Lord's attempt to go to Vrindavan, makes you wonder, isn't the Supreme Personality of Godhead achyuta, infallible? His purposes are never foiled, even in the slightest. So what is this about Lord Chaitanya attempting to go to Vrindavan? You may recall that it was only with great difficulty that he got away from his associates in Jagannath Puri to make that attempt to visit to Vrindavan. And remember his plan? His plan was first to visit his mother in Navadvip and see the Ganga, the river Ganges, and go to Vrindavan in that way. But he never made it past a very special village called Ramakeli. And we'll hear a bit more about that. That's where he met the future Rupa and Sanatan Goswami. We'll join the situation at Shantipur. How many of you have been to Shantipur? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's the place associated with Advaita Acharya. So we'll join the situation there, and you're going to see Lord Chaitanya do a U-turn. He's going to go back to Jagannath Puri. So there he is at Shantipur with the assembled entourage, the devotees, headed by Advaita Acharya and Nityananda Prabhu. So why does Mahaprabhu, after embracing them all, ask their permission to return to Jagannath Puri? It was only with great difficulty that they gave him permission to leave Puri to go to Vrindavan. Of course, this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, bound by love between the devotees and him. You may recall from the first canto, Queen Kunti making her prayers to Krishna, who's about to leave Hastinapur with the Pandavas, their capital, and he's going to Dwarka, returning to Dwarka, where his queens are. And Kunti Devi's whole prayers are for what purpose? To keep Krishna there with the Pandavas. You know the famous verse. Apparently, we've been through so many calamities, but now the real calamity is actually happening. You're leaving us. When the so-called calamities were here, you were with us. So those weren't actually calamities. Or if you say they are calamities, let them happen again and again, so you'll continue to be with us. Because the real calamity is you're leaving us. So the purpose of her prayers is to, as Krishna's aunt, persuade Krishna to stay. I often speak about Brihad Bhagavatamrita, where Narada Muni is on tour of the universe to find the greatest devotee. So we're at the point where he is talking to Hanuman, and Narada Muni is praising Hanuman. You are the greatest devotee. And Hanuman says, oh no, you don't know anything until you have seen the Pandavas. So Narada Muni takes off for Hastinapur and arrives in the capital city of the Pandavas, chanting and dancing, singing the glories of the Pandavas. I found you. You are the greatest devotees. What were the Pandavas doing when Narada Muni came upon them? Yudhisthira and the Pandavas were scheming, making up threats so that Krishna would come back to them. They thought, first of all, we'll try a yajna, a great yajna, and we'll tell Krishna, your presence is required. This is huge, colossal yajna, sacrificial ceremony. But then he thought, oh, that'll take too long to gather all the necessities for such a huge ritualistic ceremony. What about some threat? That's a quicker way. We'll manufacture some kind of threat so that Krishna will come quicker. So that's how Narada Muni found the Pandavas. So Kunti Devi is making her prayers to persuade Krishna to stay. And gradually as you feel the emotions of those prayers, you'll realize she's kind of, in a very sophisticated way, putting a guilt trip on Krishna. Everything is fine when you're here, but if you go, your glance will no longer be upon the earth. Therefore, there won't be any prosperity. Your footprints will never be decorating the earth anymore. It'll be like what happens to the name and fame of a body when the spirit soul departs. Soon thereafter, the name and fame of the body is finished. What was Krishna's response? He just mildly smiled. But then Yudhisthira makes his presentation. My dear Krishna, please stay a few days longer. And Krishna agrees. So right in the first canto, you are seeing the power of prema, pure love of Krishna. Yudhisthira is actually able to get Krishna to change his program, at least for a few days. So Lord Chaitanya got away from Jagannath Puri with great difficulty. His followers, his associates kept making excuses. You can't go now. There's this festival, and then there's that festival, and there's another festival. Finally, Lord Chaitanya said, enough is enough. Can you please give me blessings to visit Vrindavan? And they granted that, but they said, we'll all go with you. And as you may recall, the one who had the most difficult time with Lord Chaitanya's departure for Vrindavan was Gadadhar Pandit. You know about the situation of Gadadhar Pandit in Jagannath Puri. He had a vow to never go outside of Puri, Chaitra Sannyas, the vow to always stay in the holy abode. And he also had the vow to always serve the Tota Gopinath deity. But when Lord Chaitanya was leaving Puri for Vrindavan, Gadadhar Pandit insisted, I must come, I must come. And Lord Chaitanya reminded him, what about your vows? And what was Gadadhar Pandit's response? The hell with my vows. Chaitra Sannyas, the hell with it. What about serving Tota Gopinath? Just by being with your lotus feet, I'm serving Tota Gopinath millions of times. So Gadadhar Pandit wouldn't go back to Puri. And Lord Chaitanya told him, you're involving me in a dharma, breaking your vows. And what was Gadadhar Pandit's response? We're just we happen to be going to the same place in Navadvip. You go your way, I'll go my way, but we just happen to be going into the same destination. It's not that I'm going with you. This went on for a while until finally Mahaprabhu said, enough is enough. You go back. And Gadadhar Pandit collapses on the ground unconscious. Have you ever, upon someone's departure, collapsed on the ground? So Caitanya Caritamrita is full of such indescribable loving bonds. So that same Lord Chaitanya, who got away from Jagannath Puri only with great difficulty because of the bonds of love, even when he chastised Gadadhar Pandit, inwardly he's pleased, but externally, for the sake of upholding ordinary dharma, he had to chastise Gadadhar Pandit. Inwardly, though, Lord Chaitanya was relishing the love of his devotees, but for the sake of the world, he was emphasizing the external dharma. So he finally gets away to Vrindavan. But now he's at Shantipur telling everyone, I'm going to turn back and go to Jagannath Puri. What happened? And he asked their permission. Can I return to Jagannath Puri? Why is the Supreme Personality of Godhead asking for permission? This is Leela. These are pastimes. He's showing how he's bound by the love of his devotees. And since he had seen all these devotees who usually come to Puri every year for Rath Yatra, since he had seen them in Shantipur, he said, no need for you to come this year because I still intend to leave for Vrindavan, even though I'm going back to Puri. He says, I shall certainly go to Vrindavan from Jagannath Puri. If all of you give me permission, I shall return here, Shantipur. again, without difficulty. So Lord Chaitanya is always asking permission, asking for the blessings of the Vaishnavas. That's something we should think about. The blessings of the Vaishnavas are not just some empty symbolism. It's not that we just go through a ritual of asking blessings. The blessings of Vaishnavas have potency. So Lord Chaitanya is saying, I shall certainly go to Vrindavan. He hasn't given up. But I'm going back to Puri. And then what about his mother? Falling at her feet, clasping her feet. This is hard. These gestures of humility are hard for us to understand. Not only bowing down at someone's feet, but clasping their feet while you talk. Sounds like very low self-esteem, does it? Contemporary psychologists would criticize. What is this? Clasping someone's feet. And in Kali Yuga, it's very difficult to understand these exquisite, highly cultured Vaishnava dealings. So he's clasping the feet of his mother and requesting her permission. He's requesting her permission. Eventually, I'm going to go to Vrindavan. I haven't given up. Do I have your permission? So you see the emotional intensity, the bhava is building up. Go to Vrindavan, attempting to go to Vrindavan. I still plan to go to Vrindavan. Give me permission to go to Vrindavan. It makes you start to think about how Vrindavan Dham is not part of the material world. So from Shantipur, Sachi Devi went back to her home in Navadvip, and Mahaprabhu, surrounded by his devotees, started on the road back to Puri. Whatever devotees accompanied him were very happy. They got to render all kinds of service to Lord Chaitanya. Devotees live for service. We have a difficult time changing our nature from being the center of enjoyment to rendering service and making that service the center. We want to be the recipients of service. Do this for me, do that for me, make me feel good, entertain me, recognize me, glorify me. But accompanying Lord Chaitanya from Shantipur back to Puri, the devotees were happy just assisting Lord Chaitanya. Caitanya Caritamrita says they rendered all kinds of service. And therefore, Lord Chaitanya, in great happiness, returns to Puri. He's surrounded by his loving devotees. Everyone wants to be loved, actually. You'll find that everyone is love-starved. So the association of devotees gives real love because Krishna's service is in the center. And to perform Krishna's service means to engage in loving exchanges. So throughout Caitanya Caritamrita, you'll find devotees embracing one another, glorifying one another. You'll find that happening between Lord Chaitanya himself and the devotees. These are eternal activities of the spirit soul. So as soon as Lord Chaitanya arrives in Puri, he goes, of course, to see Lord Jagannath in the temple. And then news spreads all over the city. Mahaprabhu is back. And Lord Chaitanya greets every devotee of his many associates, his entourage in Jagannath Puri. He embraces each one of them in ecstatic love. You know what it's like to be around persons who, at least for the moment or the day or the week, appreciate you. Everyone knows what that feels like. If someone just feels appreciated, if they feel some soothing, some succor, even just some respect, it makes you feel so good. You may be as cynical as you can be, but still your heart is touched. So we should not forget that devotees want to feel appreciated. They have their idiosyncrasies. They have their styles that aren't your style or my style, but they actually want to feel cared for and loved. And if they don't get that in the society of devotees, they'll try to get it out of the material world. And according to their karma, they'll experience happiness and distress. The illusory energy is always offering, take shelter of me, take shelter of the illusion. You'll be satisfied. You cannot counteract that illusion by material methods. It's too much. Even though you've been beat on the head so many times trying to take shelter of the material energy, still we consider doing that. If I do this, if I do that, I'll be all right. I'll feel okay. If I make this or this material arrangement, that material arrangement, that'll make me feel better. I was just reading how the U.S. Surgeon General, in commenting on the health situation of the U.S., said the greatest defining reality of the present day is mental illness among the youth. The suicide rate between the ages of 10 and 19 has gone through the roof. And the number of persons has gone up 40% in 20 years. And then the number of persons reporting to hospitals, the number of young persons reporting to hospitals for self-harm, that number's up 80%. This is a result of trying to take shelter of the material energy for fulfillment. But what can we do in the society of devotees? Through the relationships between devotees, there has to be that sense of care, sensitivity, at least respect, because everyone wants to be loved and to love. So yes, we're serving Krishna. We all should be serving Krishna, engage in devotional service. And as much as possible, we express our appreciation of others. After all, devotees are generally sacrificing so much. They could be doing so many other things than devotional service. So if they don't feel the heartfelt affection amongst devotees, they'll try to get it in the material world. They have to make some kind of arrangement somewhere, somehow, to get that loving feeling, however conceived of, however imagined, however for real. So that's why Srila Prabhupada comments in the beginning of Nectar Devotion. Bhakti is the one switch that you turn on that solves the universal love problem. Not everyone can see that in the beginning. How does doing devotional service solve the love problem? But as we mature in bhakti, we see that devotional service means learning how to deal with Krishna's parts and parcels. That's all part of serving Krishna. So throughout Caitanya Caritamrita, you'll feel the exquisiteness of Lord Chaitanya and the devotees. Interactions. So knowing Lord Chaitanya had arrived, all the devotees came to meet him with great happiness. And Lord Chaitanya embraced each one of them in ecstatic love. People talk about love, but ecstatic love? What could that be? It's not something people ordinarily talk about or even can conceptualize. Can you imagine? Let's say Yasodeva Prabhu saying to his wife, I feel ecstatic love for you. People don't talk like that normally, but that's the language of Caitanya Caritamrita. And ecstatic love is scientifically described. Bhava, prem, and broken down into subcategories. Anubhava, Vaibhava. So in Caitanya Caritamrita, you get to see ecstatic love in action. And as you progress in your bhakti, you're able to feel just a glimpse of the relationships between Lord Chaitanya and his devotees. Just one drop of the ocean. But remember, Caitanya Caritamrita says just one drop can drown the whole universe. Just one drop of ecstatic love can drown the whole universe. So then you have the names of some of the devotees that met Lord Chaitanya. Kashi Mishra, Ramananda Roy, Pradumna, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Vaninath Roy, Shiki Mahiti, and of course, Gadadhar Pandit. So in the presence of all these intimate devotees, his personal entourage, Lord Chaitanya began to speak an explanation why he's back in Puri, why he did not follow through all the way with his journey to Vrindavan. So this attempt to go to Vrindavan should be at the front of your mind hearing this. He's trying to go to Vrindavan. He attempted. Now he's back in Puri. What's going on? And naturally, you're starting to think what's so special about this Vrindavan Dham, more than what you realized. That's an important point. Vrindavan Dham is more than what you realize. How to see Vrindavan Dham as the outpost of Vrindavan Dham in the spiritual world. The equivalent. How to see that. So Lord Chaitanya begins his explanation. He says, "It was my decision to go to Vrindavan through Bengal in order to see my mother and the river Ganges. I went to Bengal, but thousands of devotees began to follow me." He begins to describe how everywhere he went, thousands of persons would surround him. Sometimes the crowds were so great that whatever house Lord Chaitanya was staying at, the crowds would destroy the house and the boundary walls. He describes that wherever he looked, all he could see is multitudes of people. So he proceeded onward to Ramakeli. And there, of course, you know, he met Rupa and Sanatan, the future. So he describes the particular salient aspect, the most striking aspect of Rupa and Sanatan Goswami. You know, their meeting with Lord Chaitanya is described in detail previously in Madhya-Lila. And that's where Narottam Das Thakur receives inspiration for his song, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Daya Karamore. So Lord Chaitanya explains about that aspect that should be so prominent in your mind. These two brothers are great devotees and suitable recipients of Krishna's mercy. But in ordinary dealings, they are government officials, ministers to the king. So you say, all right, so they're great devotees and they have a job. They work for the government. So you should be intrigued. Can we hear more about what makes what they do so special? They're great devotees and they have jobs in the government. Okay. So Lord Chaitanya elaborates that Srila Rupa and Sanatan were very much experienced in education, devotional service, intelligence, and strength, yet they think themselves inferior to straw in the street. Now that sounds very poetic to us. They think themselves inferior to straw in the street. But we should more than appreciate the literary artistry of that expression. We should think Rupa and Sanatan actually felt that way, in spite of their material glories. And in spite of their spiritual glories. As the verse says, Vidya Bhakti Buddhi Bole Parama Praveen. In spite of their Vidya, education, Bhakti, devotion, Buddhi, and intelligence, Bala, their strength, and Parama Praveen, they're very experienced. Yet they actually 100% think that they are inferior to straw in the street. So how do you figure that? How do you handle that? So Mahaprabhu goes on, describing how the humility of these two brothers could even melt stone. I often meditate on this point. Humility that melts stone. How's that possible? That humility can be that intense. So Lord Chaitanya says, because I was very pleased with their behavior, I told them, although you are both very much exalted, you consider yourselves inferior. And because of this, Krishna will very soon deliver you. So there you have that highlighted point. You're both very exalted, yet you consider yourselves inferior. Therefore, Krishna will deliver you very soon. So let's hear a purport from His Divine Grace. Such are the qualifications of a pure devotee. Materially, one may be very opulent, experienced, influential, and educated. But if one still thinks himself lower than straw on the street, one attracts the attention of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or Lord Krishna. Attracts the attention. This reminds me of Brihad Bhagavatamrita describing the word dainya, another word expressing meaning humility, but it's more packed than the English definition, humility. Dainya means that you think yourself to be so inferior to straw on the street, but everyone can see that you have extraordinary qualities and abilities, but you don't think that way about yourself. That's dainya, according to Sanatana Goswami. You think yourself to be useless. You really sincerely think that way. Whereas everyone else sees you doing wonderful things, but you think yourself to be useless. So sometimes we think dainya or humility means you think yourself to be useless and you are useless. I can't do any service, Prabhus. I'm just so fallen. I know I should be doing some devotional service, but that's not dainya. Dainya means you're, by Krishna's mercy, you're executing wonderful tasks, but you actually 100% feel yourself to be useless. This can only develop in you by Krishna's mercy. And as Lord Chaitanya says, because of that development of that quality in Rupa and Sanatan, Lord Krishna will deliver them very soon. So we'll go on reading the purport. We discussed about how this characteristic attracts the attention of Lord Chaitanya. And now we hear about Prataparudra in the same category. Although Maharaj Prataparudra was a king, he took up a broom to cleanse the road for Lord Jagannath's Rath chariot. Because of this humble service, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very pleased with the king, and for that reason, the Lord embraced him. So we may think, what's the big deal about Prataparudra sweeping the road in front of Jagannath's cart? And the broom had a golden handle, so well, what was so humiliating about that? But you have to think in terms of the sociological context of the times. Street sweeping in India is considered an occupation for the untouchables. And here, the king, with the most exalted material post, is sweeping the road. Although, of course, he had a golden-handled broom, but still sweeping the road. This impressed Lord Chaitanya so much. Whereas in the Western world, we would say, what's the big deal? We're focusing on that golden handle of the broom. We're not focusing on the humility, and we don't have the same occupational conceptions as during the time of Prataparudra Maharaj. Sweeping the street, how much do you get paid? Yeah, I'd sweep the street if they paid me enough. What are the benefits? How many weeks vacation a year? In some countries, they don't even call you. I know when I was a kid growing up in New York, we would say garbage men. The garbage trucks would come by and you'd call them garbage men. And then it changed to sanitation workers. When I was living in Sweden, they had an even more exalted title for such workers. Location maintainers. So Prataparuja attracted Lord Chaitanya's mercy. Because of this humble service, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very pleased with the king, and for that reason the Lord embraced him. According to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's instructions, a devotee should never be puffed up by material power. He should know that material power is a result of one's past good activities, karma, and is consequently transient. At any moment, all one's material opulence can be finished. Therefore, a devotee is never proud of such opulence. He's always humble and meek, considering himself lower than a piece of straw. Because of this, the devotees are eligible to return home back to Godhead. So how are we going to attain that kind of consciousness so that we're eligible to return home back to Godhead? During my childhood days, when I would memorize Bible verses and stand in front of the whole congregation in the church and repeat Bible verses. It must have been about 4 years old. So I remember, and the meek shall inherit the earth. Did you learn that one, Jagannath Pandit? Do you know the contemporary understanding of that verse? Yes, the meek shall inherit the earth. They'll be buried 6 feet under. So persons with that conception of meekness have a difficult time understanding Bhagavad Gita situated in the Battle of Kurukshetra. Krishna wasn't allowing Arjuna to be meek. Often people think, why is Krishna urging Arjuna to fight? Isn't war bad? But you see, Bhagavad Gita is not focused on war or the absence of war. It's focused on stopping the cycle of repeated birth and death. As long as the senses are uncontrolled, the mind is uncontrolled, there's lust, anger, greed, madness, envy, illusion, there'll be war. As long as there's inner turmoil, there'll be outer turmoil. So Bhagavad Gita is not focused on war or the absence of war. I remember Srila Prabhupada saying that, do you think that if there's no war, that automatically that means there's peace? There's always some kind of war going on, inside, outside. So Bhagavad Gita is not concerned with stopping external war. Because as long as humans are conditioned souls, they'll fight. But Bhagavad Gita is focused on stopping the cycle of repeated birth and death. So sometimes persons have a hard time understanding that. Krishna should be focused on stopping the war. Stop the war now. But we say, do you think even if there was no battle of Kurukshetra, do you think there'd be peace? As long as there are material desires, there'll be conflict. So Lord Chaitanya is describing and concluding his synopsis of his meeting with Rupa and Sanatan. And then he shows in this Leela, in this pastime of dealing with Rupa and Sanatan, he shows that he gets some feedback from Sanatan, which he doesn't seem to take to heart at first. Sanatan and Rupa received the farewell from Lord Chaitanya. And as Lord Chaitanya was leaving the two of them, Sanatana Goswami says to him, it's actually not appropriate for someone to go to Vrindavan followed by thousands of persons. So this is Leela, this is pastime. So Lord Chaitanya says, I heard this, but I didn't pay any attention at that moment. Of course, we should take feedback very seriously, especially if it's from well-wishers. Yes, sometimes there can be feedback from persons who either they don't really know you, don't care to know you, don't care to hear from you. And you may certainly take that with a few grains of salt. But feedback from those who know something of you, especially those who have goodwill toward you, you should take seriously, not just dismiss it. Not that we're so full of ourselves that we can't take it on board. At least you can say, I'll think about it. I can't exactly see it right now, what you're saying, but I'll think about it. At least you say that much. So Lord Chaitanya says, although I heard it, I didn't pay it any attention. And the next morning, he moved on. However, the next night, he began to consider what Sanatan had told him and decided this is good feedback. I often say feedback is the breakfast of champions. So Lord Chaitanya is presenting his deliberations. Yes, it's true. I was followed by a large crowd, and when people would see so many persons, they would surely rebuke me. Oh, here's another imposter, another phony sadhu. No one goes to Vrindavan surrounded by thousands of persons. And then Mahaprabhu began to consider the very nature of Vrindavan. His vision was that Vrindavan is a very solitary place, meaning it's not saturated with worldly minded persons. He says, it is invincible, Durgama, very difficult to achieve. He's talking about the real Vrindavan, seen only with spiritual vision. So he decides, I will go to Vrindavan accompanied only by one person, or else I'll go alone. He's talking again about the real Vrindavan, the Vrindavan that is equal to the Goloka Vrindavan in the spiritual world. And to justify his decision, he explains, he's talking, remember, to his associates in Puri. Madhavendra Puri went to Vrindavan alone, and that's where he had the audience of Krishna, who gave him milk. So Mahaprabhu continued to think, my going to Vrindavan surrounded by thousands of people is not good. It looks like a magician with his show. No one should go to Vrindavan like this. So I'll go alone, or I'll go with one person. In this way, my journey to Vrindavan will be beautiful. Look at what I was doing. I was going with thousands of persons, soldiers, beating drums. I therefore said, fie upon me. It's an antiquated way of saying, the hell with this. I returned to the bank of the Ganges. So now he's presenting again his request to his associates. I wish that you all be pleased with me. Give me good advice. Tell me how I can go to Vrindavan without impediments. Remember, he already had left Puri with the blessings of the devotees who gave those blessings reluctantly. Now he's returned to Puri without making it to Vrindavan. He's asking for their blessings again. Tell me, how shall I be able to go to Vrindavan without impediments? So you really get into the consciousness of wanting to go to the holy Dham. How shall I attain Vrindavan? It's an invincible place. How can I do it? And now you could say, is putting an emotional blame on Gadadhar Pandit. I left Gadadhar Pandit here. He became so unhappy. Therefore, I could not go to Vrindavan. Has anyone ever done that to you? They put it all on you. I did this and I did that, but I couldn't do this because you became very unhappy. You ever do that? So Gadadhar Pandit actually felt encouraged by these words. And those words put him deeper into ecstatic love. Because it's, what do you say, better a drama than no drama. Better stir up some rasa than not at all. So Mahaprabhu is putting it on Gadadhar Pandit. I was going to Vrindavan, but Gadadhar Pandit was very unhappy. For this reason, I couldn't go. I had to come back, all because of him. And Gadadhar Pandit's in, oh. And he goes deeper into ecstatic love. And so, yes, he immediately clasps the feet of Lord Chaitanya. All this feet clasping going on. And he begins to speak. He begins to speak with great humility. And this is a very important point. Tumi yahan raha, tahan Vrindavan, tahan Yamuna Ganga, Sarva Tirtha Gan. Gadadhar Pandit said, wherever you stay is Vrindavan, as well as the river Yamuna, the river Ganges, and all the other places of pilgrimage. Although wherever you stay is Vrindavan, still for the sake of showing the example to others, you'll still go to Vrindavan. And you'll do whatever you think is best. So here we come to the principle of Lord Chaitanya's inner consciousness, which Gadadhar Pandit has highlighted. Wherever you stay is Vrindavan. You don't need to go to Vrindavan in the physical sense. So you remember during Ratha Yatra, Lord Chaitanya revealed his mind. Muramana Vrindavana. My mind is Vrindavan because in my mind the pastimes of Radha and Krishna are constantly taking place. So we get a very beautiful purport telling us how it's not essential for Mahaprabhu to go to Vrindavan because wherever he stayed was immediately converted to Vrindavan. still just to teach people, he visited Boma Vrindavan, earthly Vrindavan, the Vrindavan Dham in this material world. In this way, he's instructing everyone to visit Vrindavan Dham. So someone may wonder, well, look what Vrindavan looks like. Noisy. You go there now, it's so noisy, it's crowded. But Mahaprabhu is seeing the real Vrindavan that is only seeable with spiritual vision. So Prabhupada is commenting, some time ago, a materialistic man asked me, why are you living in Vrindavan? Why have you selected such a dirty place to live after retiring? And that was 70 years ago. What would such a person, what would such a critic say now? Hotels everywhere and tall apartment buildings and streets are jammed with traffic. So we hear that such a person cannot understand that the earthly Vrindavan Dham is always a representation of the original Vrindavan Dham. Consequently, Vrindavan Dham is as worshipable as Lord Krishna. Arajo Bhagavan Vrajesha Tanayas Tadama Vrindavanam. According to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy, Lord Sri Krishna and his abode, Vrindavan, are equally worshipable. So then we hear about the Rath Yatra festival again, where Mahaprabhu is absorbed in the ecstasy of Srimati Radharani, dragging Krishna back to Vrindavan Dham. One interesting point that's raised is that Srila Prabhupada comments how so many persons want to approach Radha Krishna Leela, but that's very difficult if they don't go through Sri Sri Gaur Nitai. Although it is very difficult to enter into the Radha Krishna pastimes, most of the devotees of Vrindavan are attracted to Radha Krishna Leela. However, since Nitai, Gaura, Chandra are direct incarnations of Balaram and Krishna, we can be directly in touch with Lord Balaram and Lord Krishna through Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu. And here is the best of all advice. Those who are highly elevated in Krishna consciousness can enter into the pastimes of Radha Krishna through the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It is said, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Radha Krishna Nahayanya. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is a combination of Radha and Krishna. Bhaktivinoda Thakur comments that by Dasyaras, serving Lord Chaitanya as a servant, that is the gateway to all the other rasas. So by serving Lord Chaitanya's mission, everything else opens up to you, whether it's Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, Madhurya, all is attained by serving Lord Chaitanya in Dasyaras, in servitorship. So then we hear the surprising point that who Prabhupada calls the eternal Brajbasis, the eternal residents of Vrindavan, like Sri Damodar, never went to Vrindavan Dham. And you get a whole list of Lord Chaitanya's associates who there's no record of their ever visiting Vrindavan. Sri Pundarik Vijanidhi, Sri Haridas Thakur, Srivas Pandit, Shivananda Sain, Sri Ramananda Roy, Sri Shiki Mahati, Sri Madhavi Devi, Sri Gadadhar Pandit Goswami never visited Vrindavan Dham. Yet, they're the eternal Brijvasis. They're always in Vrindavan, showing you that it's not a matter of physical visitation. It's all about our consciousness. The real Vrindavan is appreciated only by a pure devotee. As stated in the Brahma Samhita, Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena. When one has purified eyes, he can see that Sri Vrindavan and the original Goloka Vrindavan planet in the spiritual sky are identical. So Prabhupada concludes this most beautiful purport. We can meditate on it decade after decade by talking about the members of the Hare Krishna movement living in material cities like London, New York, Paris, Zurich, Moscow, Port Royal. No. Mm. He says, because we live in the temples of Radha Krishna and continuously hold Harinam Sankirtan, we consequently live in Vrindavan and nowhere else. Well, that's something for us to realize. So Gadadhar Pandit says, all right, the 4 months of the rainy season have begun, Chaturmasya time. Please just spend the next 4 months in Jagannath Puri, then you can go to Vrindavan. You'll be free to do as you like after 4 months of remaining here. Anyway, no one can stop you from coming or going. And all the devotees agreed, yes, Gadadhar Pandit has spoken nicely. So Mahaprabhu agreed. He agreed to remain in Puri for 4 more months. And of course, King Prataparuja was very happy to hear this. So then you have to have a lunch pastime because Krishna Prasad is not ordinary. Gadadhar Pandit extended a lunch invitation to Lord Chaitanya, and the Lord Chaitanya took lunch at the place of Gadadhar Pandit with other devotees. And what about the potency of that prasad? Kaviraj Goswami says, no ordinary human being can possibly describe Gadadhar Pandit's affectionate presentation of food or Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's tasting this food. So the presentation saturated with affection by Gadadhar Pandit, you can't conceive of it. No ordinary human being can conceive of it. And what Lord Chaitanya tasted, no one can conceive of. That's real prasad. The consciousness of the cook affects everyone. The consciousness of the person who serves the prasad affects everyone. The consciousness of the one who offers the food affects everyone. So I've often meditated on this verse, knowing no ordinary human being can understand the affection of the Gadadhar Pandit's presentation of food, and no one can understand what Mahaprabhu was tasting. All right, any questions? Yes.
I just wanted to thank you very much for reading Caitanya Caritamrita, because I remember once you said, just before a reading like this, that to understand Bhagavad Gita, you need to read Bhagavatam, but to understand Bhagavatam, you really need to read Caitanya Caritamrita. to understand everything else that's sometimes complicated. And the second point is that you were describing the drama. That it's better some drama than no drama for Gadadhar Pandit. And I also
Stir things up.
Yes, I
The
often.
worst thing is just nothing.
And I think every devotee is the same. Every person really is the same. And so if we don't have spiritual drama going on, meaning reading Caitanya Caritamrita and hearing that drama, because there's so much drama there, then you have to be drawn to some other drama. And therefore, there's other mediums of that.
Rasa, you have to get your rasas from somewhere. Get it from burying yourself in mundane news. Get it from mundane music. Get it from movies, this, that, social media. You got to get it from somewhere. I was just reading where one famous historian said that politics is the systematic organization of hatreds. How did politicians know how to deal with people's anger? I lost my job, or my business closed down, or I lost my pension pension benefits have been decreased. My company went bankrupt. So politicians know how to capitalize on that. Drama, rasa, anger. The systematic politics is a systematic organization of hatreds. If you can capitalize on that, then you can get people to do whatever you want. What do you hate? Find out what people hate, or induce them to hate, and then they're like putty in your hands.
Can we do the same, but in the opposite direction?
I hope so.
Krishna consciousness?
I would hope so.
Talking about what people hate, and then
That's why we talk, and we recognize people want love and to be loved. They want to love and to be loved. But they don't know what the central point is for where they should aim their loving energies. It takes a while to understand in bhakti that simply by serving Krishna, you're doing the best love. But we have this conception that, but I'm afraid if I just focus on Krishna, what about everyone else? But that's immature love. When you actually love Krishna, you realize the relationship with everyone else. That's why in Bhagavad Gita chapter 4, after Krishna says, Tad vidi pranipatena, if you want to know the truth about all that I've explained previously in chapter 4, then you need a genuine guru. And what's the result of having a genuine representative of Krishna? Krishna says in the next verse, Yajgatva napanar moham. You won't be an illusion anymore. You'll see all living beings, they're mine. That's the result. That's why we like to be around Krishna conscious persons. Because in their presence, we see Krishna, we see the devotees, and the relationships between the two. Anything else? Yeah.
So on this point that you were making about how, we all want to be cared for, and if we're not cared for in the association of devotees,
We want to feel that way. You might be cared for, but you may not feel it.
Right. So if we're not, well, I guess my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that at some point we have to stop being so concerned about us feeling cared for and us giving that care to others. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the advanced position, but you can't beat everyone over the head, and so hey, you're not supposed to worry about being cared for. Just care for others. People don't start off as Mahabhagavats. They start off as conditioned souls.
So I guess that consciousness just comes about naturally with like advancement in Krishna consciousness.
As you advance in Krishna consciousness, you are better, you're more expert at dealing with others. I've often explained that associating with devotees is not a mundane social skill. It requires divine empowerment. You can read a book like How to Win Friends and Influence People. You read that one?
I've heard of that.
How many have read it? Maybe. But that won't help you in associating with devotees. To associate with devotees requires empowerment. You have to beg Krishna for that ability. If you think it's just some mundane social skills, hey Jiva, I remember you. That's nice, but associating with devotees goes deeper than that. In How to Win Friends and Influence People, you're taught to always remember someone's name and repeat that name because everyone likes the sound of their name. Oh, you remember my name? Sometimes they blame their gurus. You know, he didn't even remember my name. You got 10,000 disciples, he didn't remember my name. So if you want to properly associate with devotees, recognize that the skill is divinely empowered. You have to really beg Krishna for that ability. Sometimes you can get angry at devotees, right? And you feel justified. I remember one section of the 4th canto, Bhagavatam, where it says that inferior gold, when put into a fire, becomes purified. So the inferior gold is the devotee seeking advancement. When that devotee enters the fire of self-control, animosity is purified. You know what animosity is? When someone's really rattled your cage and really made you mad. But by trying to self-control that, you become purified. Trying to control it is like putting inferior gold into a fire. And the impurities leave. The animosity leaves, but it takes self-control. Because your natural tendency is, damn you! I hope you take birth as a frog. David, you preach, you felt like that sometimes? Huh?
Not taking birth as a frog, but I've definitely gotten very angry.
Someone at work or someone at school or something like that? Teacher was giving you the hard time? Anything else? Yeah.
You mentioned that wherever Lord Chaitanya is Vrindavan, but he still goes to Vrindavan to teach people.
Yeah.
So what exactly is Lord Chaitanya trying to show us?
Look, she's asking, say it again.
So
Lord Chaitanya, wherever he is Vrindavan, but still he's instructing that the people should go to Vrindavan. And so?
And I guess my question is, like, why or what is the importance for us to go to the physical Vrindavan?
What is the importance of us to go to Vrindavan? And hopefully you'll go to more than the physical Vrindavan. Because gradually, it may take all your life, but gradually you realize that there's no difference between Boma Vrindavan, earthly Vrindavan, and the Vrindavan at the top of the spiritual world. Right now you may be thinking, why didn't Lord Chaitanya say go to Vietnam? Everyone, I remember one devotee said to Prabhupada, Prabhupada, you're always criticizing New York, and New Yorkers think New York is it's wonderful. And Prabhupada just said very wryly, everyone thinks whatever hole they took birth in is the best. So gradually, by spiritual advancement, you'll realize that Vrindavan's better than Vietnam. Okay? As your spiritual vision develops. But this section of Lord Chaitanya attempting to go to Vrindavan makes us aspire to see the real Vrindavan. And then you hear Prabhupada's instruction that you're at a temple with Radha Krishna deities. You're living in Vrindavan. Of course, we don't realize that. But gradually, as we become purified, we realize that more and more. Yeah?
Krishna Guru, you said that simply by serving Krishna, you're doing the best love, which means that you don't have to worry about your other relationships. What do you mean?
Wait! Let's hold on there. Take it easy, young lady. I didn't say you don't have to worry about other relationships. I didn't say that. I said one who actually is Krishna conscious knows how to proceed in relationships in the best way. Because Yajgatana Punar Moham. You won't be an illusion anymore. You'll see all living beings. They're in me and they're mine. That's what Krishna says. Like a bicycle wheel, to use a crude example. You know how to deal with the axle, the hub, as well as the spokes. The spokes all connect to each other through the hub. Otherwise, they're meaningless in their interactions with each other. A spoke has to interact with another spoke through the hub. So we have to make gradual progress to that goal. At least we should know what the goal is. That doesn't mean well, since I'm not advanced in bhakti, I can just treat everyone any old way. But we should know that as we become more Krishna conscious, we become more expert in dealing with others. And we're more able to show real love. But someone has to be able to recognize what is real love also. It's a two-way street. But in the beginning, neophytes are concerned. Okay, all this attention for Krishna, what about me? Who's loving me? So that has to be dealt with in bhakti. And therefore we have different ashrams, which are different ways of dealing with the need for love and to be loved. According to the person's realization of what is love. So it's not that unless you come to the highest platform, you're doomed. Forget it. Bhakti is progressive. So gradually, the devotional service love becomes more and more purified. Just like that little child. Hey, what's your name?
Madhava.
Huh?
Madhava.
Madhava. So Madhava is relishing now the love of his mother, holding him tight. But gradually, as he gets older, his conceptions of love will widen. Maybe now he just recognizes his mother. In another year, he'll recognize his father's love. And he'll be envious of his sister. And then, as he gets a little older, his vision of love expands. His friends, maybe some relatives, gradually expands to neighborhood, and it gets bigger and bigger. And because he's taken birth in a family of devotees, no doubt there's some Krishna conscious advancement, dormant and ready to develop. So similarly, as practitioners of bhakti, we're progressive. It's not that it's all or nothing. Actually, the acharyas explain that even as a neophyte, you are experiencing a tiny spot of Krishna prema, even as a brand new neophyte. There's a whiff, there's a fragrance of Krishna prema, just a slight fragrance, even in the lowest stages of bhakti. So what do you think of that? You have a question? It's a long one though, right? Okay.
So you mentioned about the India, and that a person who is highly qualified, he feels that he is not qualified. But what about...
Everyone else sees the
Yes.
person is highly qualified.
Yes, I understand. But what about those devotees who are in fact not qualified, and they see they are not qualified? How do they have opportunity to experience the India, and do they have opportunity to please the Lord?
Well, Leela Madhurya she thinks she's very unqualified, but everyone's watching how dedicatedly she serves the deities. I can look out my window and see her power walking back and forth between the temple and where she stays, and totally concentrated, totally focused. So, but she thinks, oh, I'm so unimportant, I'm just useless. But everyone else sees how determined and focused you are in serving Shri Shri Radha Damodar through Parampara. I was watching out my window today. You were seated on the golf cart with Parijata. You guys were talking so fast. I can't figure out how ladies talk so fast. It's some kind of Shakti, isn't it? Well, just tuned into each other, emotional connection, the intellect's firing on all cylinders. It's a special kind of Shakti. All right. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.